Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Young DevOps event. Today is our 15th event. We're here with the amazing Mike Bainbridge, who's joining us from AWS, who'll be doing an incredible talk all around productivity. So, as I said, it's a 15th event. We're going now for about 2 years. We've got a lot of good plans going for Young DevOps, a lot of good events in the pipeline. I'm trying to get really good speakers, so that's why the events have been a bit sporadic recently. But we've got a good, strong Q1, Q2 next year. There's a lot of things in the pipeline. So please make sure to follow us on Meetup, follow us on LinkedIn, share it with your colleagues, friends, and students, for example, if you're a teacher. And we're really looking forward to tonight's session. I'm trying to find different, unique ones, not just 101s into tech. And over to yourself, Mike.
Ethan, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a real honor to come and join and speak to the Young DevOps crowd today. I think I'm going to go for about 30 minutes or so. I know you said about 40 minutes, but I think that's probably as long as anyone wants to hear about productivity for. And then maybe we can do some Q&A at the end. So if people have questions, they can pop them in the chat, and we can follow up later. I'd like people to know you're my guinea pigs today. This is actually the first time I've delivered this presentation. So this is a world exclusive, just for the Young DevOps group. And I would be super grateful if you would let me know what you think. I'm not going to do a survey. Everyone gets millions of surveys these days. But I'd love to hear from you. Get in touch. Tell me what you think. Be honest, and I'll let you know how you can get in touch with me shortly. So I'm Mike Bainbridge. I'm a senior manager at AWS based in the UK. And today I'm going to talk to you about productivity and getting things done. When I was putting this session together, I realized there were probably 1,001 different things I could cover. So what I've tried to do is really distill it down to the basics for you today, so you get as much value out of this session as possible. I post about this topic regularly on LinkedIn, so that's the best place to find me online. So do connect and feel free to ask any questions. And as I said before, it would be great for you to provide some feedback. The topic of productivity really started to interest me around the time of the COVID pandemic. I started to realize that most meetings had gone online and they were really awful. I think when you're meeting in person, there's eye contact, body language, you have little side chats. I think you all know what it's like. And then when we had to shift online, we sort of expected meetings to be the same. But in reality, they were very different. And that made me come to realize that there were lots of these sort of day-to-day work skills that no one really teaches you. And I kind of think it's a fairly new phenomenon to this generation. So I started work about 25 years ago. And back in those days, there was no email, there was no internet, there were no smartphones. So we've all started to use tools like email and video conferencing for meetings and messaging, like Slack and Teams. And people just learned that technology as they went. And we kind of expected people to get good at it. But if you join the workforce today, and then all of a sudden you're given all these tools, I think it's a bit of a crazy situation. It's a little bit like being let into the tool shed and being told to build a car from scratch. Where do you even start? So the reason I've posted about this to my network is to share ideas onto how to use all these tools effectively and get better in your jobs. By the way, I think one caveat to note, what I'm going to share with you today is not my employer's opinion. So this is not an AWS or Amazon presentation by any stretch. This is completely personal. And of course, it kind of comes with no guarantees, and it will make sense, I think, as we go through the presentation today. So I'm going to talk about why this is such an important topic, or what you have to do to get better. And most importantly, and this is probably where I'll spend the majority of the time, how you can actually do it. And I think that's going to be the key to all of this. So let's dive in. So productivity and why it's so important. Now, productivity means being more effective, doing more in less time, and using your time in the best way possible. And time is that one commodity you can't really buy any more of, but it is super valuable. And actually, today, paying to save time has become this massive modern day advantage. The reality of the world we live in is people who have more money can afford to save time but by paying for it. Whether we like it or not, unfortunately, that's just how the modern world works. Let me give you an example. I think the primary reason why the super rich people fly on private jets is to avoid queues at the airport and save time. So I'm very lucky. I get to travel a lot for work, and air travel is probably the worst customer experience in the world. I reckon I could do a whole presentation about how bad flying is. We're going to move on. But you know what it's like. You queue to check in, you queue for security, you queue in the stores and the restaurants, then you queue to board the plane. Then there's all the added delays before takeoff, and there are always delays before takeoff. And then you have your flight, and then when you get to the other end, you have to queue again. You have to queue at passport control, queue at customs, queue to get your bag, or wait for your bag. And that's when you take out all the getting to the airport stuff as well. So, for example, when I travel, it takes me an hour to get to Heathrow Airport. It takes 2 hours. You have to get there 2 hours before. Then there's all the delays and things. So imagine what it's like if you can fly private, if you could turn up 15 minutes before you fly to a completely separate terminal. You don't have any of that. So I know that might be an extreme example, right? But this is what productivity is all about. And you can do these kind of calculations on your everyday life. So maybe a slightly more realistic example to put this into context. I assume most people watching here, that like I would say the sort of 18 to 25-year-olds generally don't watch TV anymore, but you do watch YouTube. And there's a reason why it makes good financial sense to pay the £12 per month subscription for YouTube, because you're paying to save time. By buying the subscription, you're making that investment in not watching the awful pointless ads. And that is probably an equivalent for you of what flying private must be like. So, and I did some research here. Most people in the under 30 age bracket watch around 59 minutes on average of YouTube videos per day. And if you do that, it typically means you're sitting through between 3 to 6 minutes of advertising, kind of depending. Now, I know that doesn't sound like much, but that's around 65,000 seconds a year, or a little bit more than 18 hours. So if you do the maths, based on your £12 a month subscription, you're effectively paying £8 an hour to opt out of subscription, and this to opt out of advertising. And look, there's some simple maths you can use here, right? At £8 an hour, that's roughly the equivalent of a salary of £14,000 a year. And so a salary, that's the value your employer places on your time. So assuming your employer's right, if you're making more than £14,000 a year and you watch, you're in that category, right? You watch 59 minutes of YouTube per day or more, then this means it's good value to you. Time is really valuable, and working out what that value means to you is kind of the key here. And that's why I called this session Working Smarter and Not Harder. Doing more is a myth. Most research shows we only have a small number of highly productive hours each day for work. So if you work late and put hundreds of hours in, the standard of your output is actually much lower. And if you've done any all-nighters, you'll know exactly what I mean. You get tired, you make mistakes, you rush things, you don't check, you want to finish. So here's the goal. If you have, just for example, 100 tasks to do in a week and it takes you 50 hours, if you can work smarter and be more productive and deliver that same output in 40 hours, then that means you're saving over 500 hours a year, right? So like 20 days, by the way, if you work it out. So if you're delivering your work in less time, then it means you can spend more time doing other things. So exercising, socializing with friends, leisure, taking holidays, reading, learning new skills, keeping the saw sharp, developing your network, finding a life partner, having more fun. All those other things that make your life more rewarding, that make you a high performer. If you can get your work done more effectively, you have more time to do those things. But most importantly, and just one piece of advice here, the number one thing you can do to extend your life is spend more time sleeping. If you're not getting 7 to 8 hours a day sleeping, my first tip to all of you is to work out how you can spend a third of your time sleeping. Book recommendation, Why We Sleep, from Matthew Walker. This one kind of changed everything to me. Sleep is the key. If you're well rested, you're more productive. You do a lot. You do a lot more. So, why is productivity such an important topic? It gives you time back. You can use your work time to deliver at a really high quality and be recognized as a high performer by your employer. But then all that other time you've got to make your life so rewarding. So that's why productivity is really important. Now we'll move on. What do you have to do? If that's the goal, then let's keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. There are just 3 things you need to do. First of all, you have to work out what you're going to do. Secondly, when you're going to do it. And then third, you have to get it done. I know this kind of sounds obvious, but these 3 things are the simple things that you need to focus on. So what you need to do is all about making decisions. Learning to make good decisions is a really underrated skill. One thing I've noticed throughout my career, and in fact, not just even in work, in personal life as well, is people put off making decisions. And they do it because they don't want to fail, because failure is bad. So if you make a decision and it's the wrong decision, you failed, and failure is bad. It comes with all these negative connotations, right? So people generally don't want to fail. If you don't make the decision, then you're not going to fail. So I'll put it off. So the opposite to this, if you want to make good decisions, is to treat failure as a learning opportunity, because you know what it's like, right? When you get things right, high fives all around, great job everyone, move on to the next thing. When you fail, that's the time when you say, what went wrong here? What should I do differently next time? What have I learned from this experience? So treat failure as a learning opportunity, and then make more decisions, right? And the more you do it, the better you get. And there's a framework, a mental model you can use around decision making, right? And it's quite a simple one. Treat every so first of all, when you have to make a decision, think to yourself: is this a one-way or a two-way decision? And a two-way decision is easily reversible. So if you make the decision, you can easily go back to where you were. A one-way decision is kind of much harder to go back to where you are. Right. So first of all, is it one or two way? Secondly, what is the impact of making this decision? And thirdly, who is affected? If you think of those 3 things, it will help you make easy decisions more quickly. And then when you have those big decisions, those are the ones you can slow down for. So let's put this into some context. Here's an example. Imagine you're sat around with your friends and you're saying, like, what should we do tonight? What do you think, everyone? Oh, should we go to the movies? Should we go to a bar? Should we go and watch a football game? What do you want to do? And people and ah, do you want to do that? Do you want to do this? Be the one who picks and makes a decision. It'll help you stand out. And these sorts of things are often low impact. You can move really fast. The second example, right? Imagine you get an amazing job offer, but you have to move to Singapore as part of the job. It's kind of a bit different, right? It is reversible, but probably much harder to reverse. There's a lot more to consider. So the impact is bigger and you should take more time. So the first part of understanding what you need to do is about decision making, a really underrated skill, something you should focus on more often. The second part about learning what you need to do is kind of an extension of that decision making, and that's learning to say no more often. The reason most people struggle, I think, is they say yes to too many things. Tasks, meetings, side projects. is obvious. The more you have on your plate, the harder it is to manage. Now, we all want to be part of the team. We want to be nice and help other people out. But you really can't say yes to everything. And guarding your time is a key thing that you can do here. And here's a mental model for you. If you say yes to something, that probably means you're going to have to say no to something else. So think about things in terms of priority and which are more important to you. And as part of learning to make decisions and then learning to say no more often, there are different ways of doing it. It doesn't have to be a flat out, no, I'm not doing it, or no, go away. There are some other ways you can say no. So, I'd love to, but I can't do it right now. I've got so much on my plate, but I might be able to help you next month. I can make some time then. Or, oh, you know what? That's not really my area of responsibility, but I know this great guy called Ethan. He's great. He'll be able to help out. He'd be way better at this. Why don't you get in touch with him? Or if your manager asks you to do something, like you say, look, if you want me to do this, like I've got 4 other things that I think are equally important, I'm going to have to drop one of them. Which of the 3 other things, should I postpone or cancel? What do you think? Put the ball in their court. So there are different ways to say no. So what you need to do, make good decisions. Secondly, when you're going to do your tasks. Now, when you're going to do something is all about planning. It's about knowing how much effort you have to put into them. And really interestingly, I think this is a lot about learning when you're going to be most effective. I think one of the most frustrating things I see around, particularly about productivity advice online, is something that I call the 5 a.m. bro club. Because, by the way, it's usually always guys. They give this advice that I'll get up at 5 a.m., do 2 hours work before anyone else is awake, and this is an amazing productivity window. It might be true for a lot of people, but actually, we're not all great at 5 a.m. And if we go back to the Why We Sleep book, by the way, everyone's different. Some people are great in the morning, some people are good during the day, and some people are night owls, right? Really good at doing things in the evening. In fact, I put this presentation together. I remember checking the time. It was like 9:30 p.m. when I first started working on it, because that's the time that is most effective for me. Again, when you think about planning, keeping it simple is key. Every day has 24 1-hour chunks in it, or if you like, 48 30-minute chunks. How are you going to use those slots most effectively? That's really the key to when you're going to do things. And then the third thing you have to do is you have to get stuff done. You have to deliver. Working out what you're going to do and when you're going to do it, I think they're probably relatively easy. Delivery and execution is always the hard thing. And there are lots of problems here, right? It's sometimes hard to get started. Procrastination is a big issue. Putting things off to the last minute. Avoiding distractions is hard. Unfortunately, we live in this world where everything beeps and vibrates and takes every opportunity to put us off. And there's this kind of myth around multitasking that you can do multiple things at once. By the way, this is a key thing to realize early on. Multitasking is bad. I'm sure a lot of you know this, but every time you switch context, right? So every time you go from an email to preparing a presentation to doing some coding, every time you switch, it takes you about 6 or 7 minutes to adjust to the new task and actually get in the zone, right? To get in that focus zone. So if you keep switching between things, if you keep getting different distractions, then very quickly you won't be able to deliver high quality work at all. So staying in that zone takes focus, and that's a really important skill to learn and practice and develop and get better at. And by the way, it's something you can practice and get better at. It kind of all starts with having a great environment, somewhere quiet, tidy, distraction-free. You often see people go to coffee shops or bars and things, and they're sat there tapping away on their laptops. Regardless of what you think, it's probably not the best environment. It's much better to to be quiet and zoned in. So yeah. Anyway, summary. Keep it simple. Work out what you need to do. Find the right time to do it by scheduling and planning, and then focus and really get it done. So that's what you need to do. We talked about why productivity is important. So now we move on to the most important thing. How do you get it done? How do you do these 3 things? And by the way, there are hundreds here, but I've kind of boiled this down. And what I want to talk about are a couple of foundations, things that are important to everything, and then some focus on those 3 areas that we talked about. So what you need to do, when you need to do it, and how you actually get it done. And the caveat to all of this is these are things that work for me. I've done a lot of experimentation as part of my productivity journey. I've tried out loads of different ways of doing things, and I encourage you to adapt them to you if you want. Try things out and really see what works for you. And this kind of moves on to the first of the foundations. It's all about building your own systems. Why do you need to build systems? Because good intentions don't work. We know that. You have to build a system that you write down, you document in some way, you use, and then you follow up and you review. Other people's tips and tricks won't always work for you, so you really have to learn to personalize. So I know, again, this is hugely ironic, right? I'm doing a presentation, giving productivity advice, and then maybe telling you it might not work. My advice is try lots of things, see what works for you, and adapt. There are tons of experts out there. There are lots of people who tell you the best way to do things, but at the end of the day, we're all different. And some things work and some things don't. Again, going back to that 5 a.m. thing, a lot of people talk about, get up at 5 a.m., get this 2 hours of work in. It just doesn't work for me. It might work for you. If it does, great. If not, don't worry. See what works, figure it out, and adapt. And by the way, that's kind of all I've done. And so far, that's worked out pretty well for me. So here's how you build a productivity system. First of all, build it, so document it. So make a note. Write down why you're doing this. Make it real. What problem are you solving here? And then define your process or tool. How are you going to solve that problem? And track how you're going to measure your success. How do you know if it works or not? And once you've worked out what this little process you're going to use is for your productivity, and by the way, if you're not sure what this is all about, don't worry. I'll share some examples with you a little bit later, and hopefully will start to make sense. So first of all, build the system, come up with this little process, then use it, try it out, and then see what happens, inspect it, go back and review it. What worked? What could you do better? Can you simplify it? How should you change it? Go back a week later or 2 weeks later and reflect on that little process you've put together. The key things here for me are writing things down. However, you take notes either on a physical pad or using some sort of digital note-taking system. Find a place to make a note of all your little systems you built, and make sure you go back and inspect and improve. Right, that's kind of really important. And then very quickly, you'll start to build up this suite of little productivity systems, your own little, I don't really like the word life hacks, your own little tools, right, that help you get things done and be more effective. So start by building systems. Is the best way forward. Secondly, the second foundation here is then develop those systems into habits. So habits are these repeatable tasks that we do regularly, almost like on autopilot. And you know what I mean, right? Every morning you wake up, you have a coffee, eat your breakfast, you brush your teeth, take a shower. It's your daily routine. And you can build and develop little routines for productivity as well. We're creatures of habit. We don't like to change. We like to follow things in a structured way. But in order to improve, we have to change, right? The classic catch-22, if you like. So developing those new habits and building them and doing them over and over again until they become second nature is kind of how you do this. Some people say it takes 66 times of doing a repeated thing every day before it becomes second nature, before you can call it a habit. I think it can be more or less depending on what it is and what you're doing. I don't think there's strictly hard and fast rules, but there are some key things to help you develop habits. First off, start small. Start with something small and complex. So, if your workout habit is to build your upper body, don't start by trying to do 100 press-ups every day. Start small and grow. And you'll be surprised, by the way, how quickly those habits will build and grow. Secondly, make it easy and fun. And then thirdly, you need to learn to reward yourself for doing it. This is the reason why gamification of mobile apps and things works so well. Tracking your habits and then learning to stack them, like advanced level. And when habits like that become second nature, you'll be really unstoppable. But look, I'm not an expert, and there are two amazing books about habits. So the one you'll see on the left here, called Tiny Habits by a guy called BJ Fogg. I think he was the creator of this whole habit movement. It's a top read, fantastic, super smart guy. And then the second one is Atomic Habits by a guy called James Clear. And both of these will give you lots of tips and tricks on how to build habits, reliable ways of how to think about them, and how you can use them. So those are the foundations. Let's move on to those three areas I talked about. So the first one, what you need to do. For me, this is all about your to-do list. Why is a to-do list so important? Our brains aren't designed to hold large lists of information. You have to get them out. You have to write them down. You'll forget things, especially as you get older like me, you start to forget things, right? You can really only keep maybe 1 to 3 things in our short-term memory at once. Right? I know it sounds like a low number, but trust me on this. And once you start to learn to use the list properly and trust it, it gives you amazing confidence. You never miss deadlines. You become much more organized. So the first thing to do, right, to get started if you don't use lists is really to make the list, right? Write down everything you have to do for work, also for like outside projects, those things, maybe things around the house, like decorate the bedroom or like book the holiday. Get used to putting things on the to-do list and then maintaining that list. And let me share with you how I do my to-do list. Right, so I have 3 buckets. I have one list called today. I have one list called coming up. That's things that are going to happen this week. Slightly longer list. And by the way, that's where I add new things. And then I have the future, right? And this is the really long list, and you can order it, by the way, if it makes it easier. And those are things that won't get done this week, but are things in the future. And you can also add things onto that part of, also add things onto that list as well. So what I do, I have a daily review, and I'll talk about that when we come to planning in a moment. And in my daily review, at the start of the day, I move tasks from coming up to today. What am I actually going to do today? Put them on the today list, and then work through that throughout the day and cross them off. At the end of the week, I do a weekly review, and that's where I move tasks from the future list into the coming up list. And that's basically how I move tasks between the 3 different lists. By the way, there are loads of online tools for measuring and managing your tasks. I use something called Todoist. It's got a nice mobile app that helps it easy, helps make it easy. Capturing new tasks is also kind of like a key part of this. I do it in a couple of ways. I either add it to the list straight away, or I keep a little notepad and write down my list and then transfer them at the end of the day. But knowing what you're going to do, having that certainty and keeping a really good to-do list, for me, area 1, absolutely key. Secondly, area 2, when are you going to do it? So like I mentioned before, I have a daily planning session. At the start of every day, I spend maybe about 20 to 30 minutes, kind of depending on what I'm going to do that day. And that's when I spend the time moving my tasks from my coming up list into my daily list. And then I work out throughout the day when I'm going to do those tasks. So how much time do I have today to do things, and when am I going to do them? And like a top tip here, by the way, always assign more time than you think. So I'm an optimist. I always think I'm going to be better than I am. So the rule of thumb I work with is if I think something's going to take 15 minutes, I double it. I allow 30 minutes. And I always think it's better to deliver something earlier than you promised than be late. I think no one gets told off for arriving early to a meeting, but sometimes you can get in trouble for coming late, depending what it is. So at the start of every day, 20 to 30 minutes to plan the day. Know what you're going to do. The second part about planning is the weekly review. So at the end of each week, spend probably a bit more time, maybe 45 minutes to an hour or so, just having a quick review of what tasks you haven't done, working out where they're going to fit in the week ahead, and like doing a little bit of inspection, right? What have I learned? How can I improve? What did I miss out this time? What task did I block 30 minutes for, but actually took me an hour to do? How can I learn from those things? This inspection idea is kind of key to that weekly review. And then the third thing is about time blocking. And again, you'll find loads of articles about this online. Like owning your calendar is really key. If you don't look after your time, people will use and abuse it. You know what it's like. There's a black block in your calendar. Someone will assume you're free and send you a meeting invite. My advice is in that morning planning session, block all your time out. And I even know some people who block out their whole calendars, right, when they're going to sleep, everything they do. I don't quite take it to that extreme. I typically block out calls and meetings, preparation for those calls and meetings, breaks, travel time, lunchtime, those sort of things. So for planning, always start with a daily plan, a weekly review at the end of the week, and then learn to block your time. So then finally, the third area, how do you actually get these things done? And the key here is about learning to do deep work. You can really only do like between 3 and 4 hours of highly focused work per day when you're like in the zone. You know what it's like, right? You're super productive. To do that, you have to clear yourself of distractions. So again, good environment is really important. And then have a system for doing that deep work, right? So my system for that, I make myself a fresh coffee, get a glass of water ready, turn off all my notifications, put my phone in the drawer, close Outlook, close your email client, close Slack down. I even unplug my second screen. I kind of think working on a single screen is way better. And then before I start, make a quick note. What am I going to do? Why is it important? Set the timer and off I go. And there are lots of different ways to do it. I kind of use a bit of a slightly modified version of what's called the Pomodoro technique, where you work for 30 minutes and take a 10-minute break, and then you repeat that over and over, right? So maybe you do it 2, 3, or 4 times. So you spend 30, 60, 90 minutes working. But the key part about this is to take breaks. Take breaks often. They will keep you fresh. And there's loads of research people have done into this. You'll be 20% more focused, 40% more motivated to get things done. And by the way, there's an absolutely fantastic book on this called Deep Work by a guy called Cal Newport. Something I'd really, I really recommend you read. He's done a lot of research into getting into that state where you're focused and working really well. One thing I think I'm gonna end on while we're talking about deep work is this a challenge I hear from a lot of people, which is about how to get into that flow state. Is that like that blocker of procrastination, right? How do I get started? What do I do? There are a couple of little tips and tricks you can do. One that works really well for me is I start with a few small tasks, right? So I might have some emails to write or a meeting invite to send. I do some small tasks, build up some momentum, some of those things from the daily list that are quick and simple tasks to get done, cross them off the list, and sort of like builds up, like I said, builds momentum and helps reinforce things. It's that little reward that really helps you get things done. So, in summary, to wrap it up, keep things simple. Like, understand what you're going to do, when you'll do it, and then focus on getting it done. Try lots of different things. There's tons of advice out there, right? Work out what's right for you, and then build your own systems. Write them down, try them out, inspect them, and simplify them and make them better. And I've shared a few of mine with you today. But the key here, I think, is going on your own little journey. And then finally, once you've started to develop and make those productivity systems for yourself, make them into habits, right? Don't start the day before your daily plan is done. Do it every day, and eventually it will become second nature. And to me, this is really what it's all about. So look, I try to keep it simple. Like I said, hundreds of things to share. I share like pretty much every day on LinkedIn. So do come and find me there. There's a QR code and a link. I really appreciate your time listening, and your feedback would mean a lot to me. If this resonated with you, if it made sense, let me know. If there's anything I could do better, let me know. That would be great. I don't know if we've had any questions, but if anyone has any questions, then do feel free to follow up with me. And the best place is LinkedIn. That's it, Ethan. Back to you.
Much. Yeah, thank you very much. That really, really interesting, particularly like how you prioritize work and the daily planning and thing. It's something which I need to start doing more myself. I do get distracted, plenty of different emails and Teams messages and Slack messages flying in during the day. But yeah, that was really good. I put a request out for questions. I don't think we've had anything yet, but we'll just sort of give it a few minutes to see if we get anything.
So look, one of those things around distractions, particularly emails and Slack messages, that I think everyone kind of forgets is you don't get any prizes for replying quickly. Right? And this is one of the things about email that I think no one really trains you about. It's this asynchronous form of communication, right? It's not immediate. When I send emails, I don't expect replies within a few minutes from my team. And most people don't. And I can't remember where I read it, but it was some CEO who was giving advice about doing email. And he says, I do my email first thing in the morning. I spend like an hour answering emails. Then I close Outlook, never go back to it until the following day. So people know my response time is like within 24 hours. And I think we all get caught up in this, we have to respond immediately, right? We get the notification, it drives the part of the monkey brain that we want to respond to. If you can learn to shut that off, if you can, just put email to one side, like instant messaging, probably sometimes a bit harder, but email for sure. Then you'll definitely be much better. And I read something that said if you spend specific time working on email, like kind of like that CEO thing, right? You do a bit every morning, but that's it. Then you're like 20% more effective at getting things done. I can't remember where the stat was. I'm not too sure how they work that out, but I mean, sounds good.
Definitely. Cool. I don't think we've got any questions, but yeah, as Mike said, please feel free to reach out to him on LinkedIn, or please post in the sort of Young Devops meetup link, and I'll make sure they get onwards to Mike. Thank you very much for coming out this evening, Mike. As I said earlier, earlier at the start of this meetup, we've got a few good plans for next year, sort of Q1. We have got World War meetup in December. It's just been finalised as we speak. And then we've got one in January, one in February, and one in March as well. So something to look forward to. If you're interested in hosting us physically in person or speaking, please get in touch with myself via LinkedIn. We're always looking for good speakers on a variety of topics. And yeah, thank you very much and have a great evening.